Now we are going to switch gears a little bit here. We were just talking about a new show on Max, formerly known as HBO Max prior to today. It is that infamous East Texas trial back in the national spotlight this week. The Mineola Swingers case, the subject of a new docuseries that debuts today. So giving us a little context here. Back in 2005, 7 adults were accused of forcing children to participate in sex acts in a Wood County shack known as the Swingers Club. The docuseries is split over 3 episodes detailing the allegations, the trials, and the appeal. It is called How to Create a Sex Scandal, and I want to join us here on the show is Michael Hall, who was a reporter on the original case. There it is, a reporter on the original case as well as a producer on this docuseries. Good afternoon, sir. How you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm doing well. So first and foremost, kicking us off here, can you just tell us how you first got involved with the Mineola Sex Swingers story?
Well, I remember I'm based in Austin, and I read a story in the national news after the 3rd trial, after Patrick Kelly was found guilty. And I read a story about it, and I thought, well, that's kind of interesting. It was a bunch of kids accusing a bunch of adults of these terrible sex crimes. And I looked into it, and I saw that there was no evidence. It was all just the words of the kids. And thought, well, that's an earmark of a bad case. And so I actually went up to Tyler in Mineola and started talking with folks, and found that a lot of people up there believed the same thing, that this was a bogus case and that these folks were innocent.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but from everything I've read regarding the docuseries, that's kind of how it plays out over the 3 episodes, is continuing to build the actual facts of the case to sort of imply, per se, that, hey, there wasn't a whole lot of legitimacy here. So take us through when you were contacted regarding the docuseries. How did you first get involved? Did you begin the conversations, or were you added in at a later time?
Well, I did about 10 stories on these cases over the years, starting in 2009, either in the magazine, in Texas Monthly, or on our website. And so at a certain point, a couple of years ago, the producers of the documentary got in touch with us because it seemed like an interesting story, a small town Texas, a story that hadn't really broken out into the national news at all. And so they were interested in telling this story, which obviously impacted so many people. And, to me, it was just an obvious injustice. And a lot of innocent people went to prison. A lot of kids were messed up. And the person who put it all together walked away scot-free. And so they saw that as a good story and reached out to us.
So have you been able to see the docuseries?
I've seen a rough cut of it, yes.
Okay, so for those that are going home tonight to watch the series, again, it's out now on Max. What do you hope the viewers take away from it?
Well, it's a very complicated story. It had a lot of people, and it's hard to even explain exactly what happened. I hope that people will take away just how sometimes emotion wins out over the head. The heart wins out over the head when it comes to figuring out whether somebody did something or not. And in this case, I think a lot of well-intentioned people were trying to help children, save the children. But they didn't look very closely to what these kids were saying, which was just absolutely bonkers. I mean, it made absolutely no sense. But they believed the children about these so-called sex crimes, and they didn't look very deep at the person who was behind the whole thing, who was basically getting these kids to lie. And so, I mean, it's understandable. People want to protect children, but sometimes you can bend over so far backward that you don't protect the adults, and the adults all went to prison for something they didn't do.
You mentioned that you have covered this specific story through various different mediums about 10 separate times, and this actually isn't the first film regarding this. There is another film, Booger Red. So what do you think this documentary adds to the story for viewers?
Well, one of the best things it does is it got Margie Cantrell on camera, and Margie Cantrell was the person behind this whole thing, and she had basically refused to do an interview with me. She refused to do an interview for Booger Red, but the filmmakers here got her, the producers got her on camera, and you can see why Margie is such a powerful figure when you see her on camera. She's truly a powerful human being.
In similar docu-series styles of true crime, of past crime, even cold case, there have been future legal openings or reopenings of cases. Do you think that something like that could happen due to this docu-series?
I sure hope so. I mean, there are 6 adults in Smith County right now who have felonies on their records for of injury to a child when they didn't do anything. They're innocent. And this impacts how they get their jobs. It impacts what their neighbors think of them. And there are also there are 4 children up there who could probably use some counseling because they went through a terrible, terrible experience. While I'm sure the statute of limitations has ended on some of these things, I also know that the district attorney, Jacob Putman, can, if the district attorney wants to do something, wants to right or wrong, he can make it happen, and he can make it so that these folks are no longer considered felons. They're innocent people, and because of this crazy trial and these crazy lies told by these kids, these poor folks are considered child sex felons, and which is absolutely absurd and completely unfair.
Again, How to Create a Sex Scandal is out streaming in a 3-part docu-series today on Max, otherwise known as HBO Max, prior to today as well. Michael, I want to thank you for joining us. And before we go, is there anything else that we haven't touched on that you would like viewers to know about the docu-series or the case itself?
No, you've done a great job. I mean, it's a complicated story. Watch the doc. It's very well done.
Fantastic. Again, thank you for joining us on the show, and I look forward to being able to enjoy the docu-series later on tonight.
All right. Thank you very much.
Absolutely.
Bye-bye.
Have a great afternoon. Once again, that was Michael Hall. He was a reporter on the original story out of Mineola, now a producer on the docu-series that is, again, out today on Max, called How to Create a Sex Scandal, based on a story right here in Mineola back in 2000.